I firmly believe if I can do this, a self-taught person with like a 2.3 GPA, high school GPA can do this. I really believe anybody can. That was really the first step for me, was aligning myself with people smarter than me. The cool thing about this client, he was like, hey man, just skip to the bottom. We want to see the price. I mean, think of this like the most intense Southern dude. Just scroll to the bottom, man. Show me the number. Like,
So, Brandon, would you just maybe start off by sharing what prompted you to reach out to me? We'll start there.
yeah, so I've been a designer for a long time, self-taught. I've always been a creative. I started just becoming passionate about brand strategy because I wanted to help my clients just go beyond what I was helping them with, and um, had some successes and had some fails. And so I started following Melinda, and in the last 2 years, really, like, a lot of momentum has picked up for me and the little company that I've started with some friends. And we had a really cool story happened, and um, we pitched a client on something, and it was really massive and really big, and it was based around brand strategy, and it worked. And I went, oh my gosh, like, this really does work. And I had known that it works, but up to this point, like, it didn't work on this big of a scale with this big of a dollar amount. I firmly believe if I can do this, a self-taught person with like a 2.3 GPA, high school GPA, can do this. I really believe anybody can.
Could you talk a little bit about that project in particular and walk us through how did that come about? How did it come about that you were able to utilize brand strategy and pitch it to them? Like the whole, could you just talk about that?
Yeah. So I don't know the design backgrounds of everybody here, but I'm assuming it's like brand designers. Melinda, would I be accurate? Most people,
For
web
the most
designers.
part. For the most part.
Okay.
We have some
Yeah.
marketing and copywriters, but yeah.
Amazing. Love it. And that all overlaps. So I think that's really key, actually. And as I'm sure you guys are learning that. Yeah, so I took a leap of faith with some buddies a couple years ago, and we said, hey, we were working for big agencies and seeing the dollar prices that they were charging for brand packages. And we said, well, we're the ones doing all the work. Why don't we do it ourselves? Like, they're charging $1 million for a brand package, quite literally. And we got together and we put our heads together, and we were like, we can do that. We're the ones doing the work. They're charging $1 million. And like, my buddy was getting, I think he was making like 40,000 a year, and he's the one that's building out the whole brand pack, all of it. And we're like, something's wrong. So we started our own little firm. And that was really the first step for me, was aligning myself with people smarter than me, people that had been doing things a little different and a little bit better than me in certain areas. And so what happened was, as we're kind of growing this little thing, we're getting calls from people, and friends start recommending us, and we get a couple small to medium sized jobs. We did a couple, we had a couple brand clients for 20,000-ish dollars, brand strategy and the visual identity and all that. You guys know. Um, and so we get a call one day from a friend who's a photographer, and he's like, hey, I've been working with this client. They're an insurance broker. They're pretty big, but they're still like considered boutique, but they need a website, and they need a video. Would you guys be willing to meet and like give them a quote? And we're like, wow, like, we're not just in the business of building websites. Like, we will, but really, like, what our process is all about, building the whole brand holistically, as you guys understand. Like, yeah, we can come in and do your website, but if it's not attached to like a brand with deep meaning, your website's not going to be successful, that whole thing. So we're like, yeah, like, we're still trying to like grow our business, and like, we need, we got to keep the lights on. So like, let's meet with them. But we weren't like super excited about it. It's an insurance agency. It's not, some of this work's not exciting, guys. Like, that's just the reality of it. Like, so we meet with this client, and we immediately go into our process, which is very much, I'm sure you guys have all read the Blair Enns book, and Win Without Pitching. We're not big into proposals. Ironically, the world that we're in now, which I'll get into a little bit later, you legally like have to send proposals sometimes if you want to get work. But so we just do what we do. We listen. And I know that Melinda's talked about that a lot, but that's something that we really believe in, and not trying to come in and sell, but trying to come in and diagnose and find out what the problem is and if we can help them. And so uh, turns out, like, they're like, we need this website, and we hate our website. It sucks. And we're like, well, why does your website suck? Why do you hate it? They're like, oh man, we just wasted a bunch of money and it got done a couple of years ago and we've just been sitting on it. We don't like it. And we're like, you know, how you just have to keep asking, well, what about it don't you like? Like, is the website effective? We're like, well, we don't really know if it's effective. We just don't like it. So it turned into about an hour and a half phone call. And after just asking a ton of questions, uh, figuring out why they don't like their website. And they were like, we need a video. We need a really cool video. And look at this other friend of mine, his construction company, and look at this cool video they have. And we need a video like that too. And I'm like, when we got down to it, we were like, guys, like, it's not that your website's bad. It was bad, you know, from a design perspective, it was terrible. But uh, you don't lead with that, you know, like, because at the end of the day, you want to help them. And these big companies, insurance agencies, it's all about ROI and stuff like that. And just coming in and saying, yeah, your design's not very good, we can make you a better design. The reality is most of the world doesn't care about if their design's good or not. And so instead of leading with that, we're like, well, what do you need your website to accomplish? And we were able to outline like 4 really clear goals that they wanted their, not just their website, but their brand to accomplish. And we were able to figure out like, hey guys, you don't like your website because your brand doesn't have a story to tell. Like, there's no like clear, compelling narrative for anybody to buy into. The clients you're trying to work with or your team of employees, their turnover was really high. And the way that they grow as a business is by attracting and retaining top talent. And so what we learned and realized was like, you don't need a website, you don't need a video, you need a brand. And so what we did was we actually didn't just come out and say that. We helped walk through our thinking with them and helped them self-diagnose that. Well, what would happen, you know, okay, so if you had this and this and this happened, like if we created this for you, do you think this would help you attract and retain top talent? And they're going, yeah, like that would be amazing. At which point it was the second part of kind of our process and all this where we realized, all right, we have an opportunity here to not just do a website, to not just do a video. We have an opportunity here to really build a brand for this company. So at that point, we were like kind of bought in. And at the end of the day, if they were like, nope, we don't care about a brand, we just need a website, we were ready to walk away. I'd be like, great, we're going to refer you to a web design firm that just does web design, because while we can do it, it's not our bread and butter. And so I think that's really key. Like the first step is very similar to Melinda, you talked about this, like being willing to say no if it's not in your wheelhouse and walk away from it and not just take the money and run, and it be a stressful thing. So we helped them kind of self-diagnose that, like, and it really was the problem. It wasn't like that we were making up the problem. The real core problem is they didn't have a brand. They just had a company and they had an old outdated logo and they had an old outdated website. But there were things about their business that were really compelling. They were really different from their competitors on the inside. The way that they interact, their brand attributes, their tenacity, the brand personality, and the things that their employees and their customers were saying about them were unbelievable. But it wasn't translating. There was this huge disconnect happening. And so, make a long story short, we kind of helped them self-diagnose, and then we had what we call an inspiration meeting where we say, hey, here's what we've done for some other companies. And we walked through, I think, 2 or 3 kind of case studies of some other brands that we helped build, some in the financial world. One of them was a coffee shop, which is kind of unrelated, but just to show them our capabilities and to get them to start imagining that new future for themselves. Um, and you know, the cool thing about this client, he was like, hey man, just skip to the bottom. We want to see the price. How much does it cost? Because at that point he was bought in. He was like, he realized that we need this. And we scroll to the bottom of the screen and there, we got the stuff and the breakdown of like what we're going to do. And we've got the line item and it's $78,000 for the brand strategy and the visual identity. And like, I think we threw in like 3-page website into that. And I'll share a key to this in a little bit. And he was like, okay, send us the contract. Where do we sign? And we're just like, okay, yeah, you know, it was the biggest project we had ever, it was the biggest number we had ever quoted for something that's based around a brand strategy. And we're like, all right, so get off the call. We're like high-fiving and like, you know, blah, 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 like all excited. But it was really powerful. But then like the rubber hit the road. We're like, man, we really got to deliver for this client. And so there's a little bit more to it than that. Like, I mean, I don't know how far into the details you want me to get, Melinda, but the funny thing is the last time Melinda and I talked, we were still building out the presentation for that. And in presentation, like we only show one logo. We're big fans of the one logo only. And we hadn't presented that yet since Melinda, you and I talked, and we just presented it all last week. And to me, the most powerful part about doing this is the CEO, we're in this big conference room. He reclines back, he sits there and he does this and he looks up and he's got tears in his eyes, like no joke. And he goes, "You guys have bleep, bleep, blown my bleep, bleep expectations out of the water." And he goes, "This is more than we ever thought we were going to get. I'm sold." He's like, "Just stop the presentation." He's like, "Just stop talking. Let's do it." Like, it was just one of those moments where we're like, again, just like a reinforcement of like, this works. If you listen and your posture is really to help and not make money out of the client and really serve them and really bring their brand to life, it works.
Does anyone have a question that they would like to ask? Zoe, go for it.
Brandon, thanks for coming to our Q&A. Yeah, what kind of questions do you like to ask clients during your sales calls?
That's a great question. I think it all depends on the industry. The insurance industry is very different from like a company trying to build a brand, a restaurant or like a coffee shop or something. And I think the very first thing we try to figure out are what are your goals like right now for your business? Like, what are you guys trying to accomplish? How do we tie back a brand and a logo and a visual identity and a strategy back to business goals? Because the clients that have the money to pay what you guys are worth they care about that. They care about that a lot. And so we ask questions to kind of discover what their pains are. What are your problems? Can we solve it with brand? Can we not? If we don't, like maybe we're not a right fit. What's really hurting right now? Where do you want to get to? What's holding you back? What are some of your revenue goals? Like we just asked them, like, hey, it's confidential. Like, where are you at? How do you want to grow? How do you want to scale? The big thing with this insurance company is when you're a boutique insurance firm and you grow to a certain point, the big guys like Progressive come in and buy you. And they're like, we don't want to get bought. So like, it's hard for us, like, but we do want to grow and like scale to this amount of revenue. So like, we need a brand that can scale. That was a really big thing for them. And the brand that they had couldn't scale. And so it's a mix of questions. There are very technical design-based questions and brand attribute questions. And we have a really fun question that we ask in our brand discovery. That's if your brand were a car, make, model, and year, what would it be? I'm sure some of you have used that, but that's a really telling question that helps like kind of understand like how they see themselves and how others see them. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question, but it just kind of depends on the industry. But I think the most important thing is find out what their goals are and find out what their pains are, what their problems are. You can help people solve their problems. They'll open their wallets. And that's not like a manipulative thing. It's just.
Great question, Zoe. Anyone else have Marcel? Yeah.
Well, it's related to this question a little bit, but if you were saying the question will be based, of course, it depends on the industry. If you, prior to that, do you do a little research on the industry at least? Like, yeah, just to see what is the market and at least to get understanding maybe, or is there any formula that you have, or just randomly you just look at different things to see what you find, or is there any specific that you look for before, prior to that, or find inspiration, or what? But how deep do you go before then, or just coming blank, like no, not knowing anything?
Yeah, so that's great. You don't want to spend too much time because, and this is kind of like, this is my own theory. Some people are a little bit different, but if it's a discovery call and you've won the work, that's a different thing. Then it's like, we're putting our team out there, we're reading about stuff, we're doing competitive analysis, which we place a really high value on. Competitive analysis is huge, especially for these kind of industries. But when it's just like a diagnosis call, which is what I call that, we read a little bit about the company, we go to their website. We maybe, like at this point, we had a couple email conversations back and forth and we asked a few things, but really what we want to do is we want to get the client talking. We want to get them talking about themselves. People don't want to hear you. They want to hear them. And a lot of times in these conversations, the more you can get them talking about themselves, they'll start sharing problems that they didn't even know they were having about their brand, about their company. And we try to do as little talking as possible. I think one thing too that's really important is like just be okay with the silence, like if there's silence. But obviously we have like a guideline of things that we want to ask and find out. But most of it really is at this point based around figuring out what their problems are and what's really hurting their business right now. And then after that, it's like, hey, okay, yeah, these are huge problems. These are huge pains. Let's have what we call an inspiration call, which is literally just show some other stuff that you've worked on, get them inspired, get them imagining. But I think if you haven't won the work yet, I would say unless you can afford to go and do hours and hours of research, which I think will be great. If you can afford to go and do that, and it's like your only client, and this is like your first big thing, and you really want to wow them, go and do it. But you can't always do that in these situations because you don't know at this point if it's even going to be a right fit client. So you don't want to spend 10 hours doing research. You're losing money at that point. But that's a great question. Did that help?
That's great. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Chelsea, go for it.
Mute. Brandon, could you go deeper into what you do for an inspiration call? Is that something that is used to help incite someone after a sales call or a discovery call before a contract, or how does that look to you?
Yeah, so the inspiration call always comes after kind of the what I call the diagnosis call, right? So you get it. So the very first thing that happens is however you acquire the connection with this client. Maybe I don't know, if you're running ads, they come to your inbox, or you get a referral from a friend. Maybe they don't know a lot about you. So the first thing you need to do is, hey, let's have a conversation and find out where you're at with things. That's the very first thing, and that's the diagnosis call. That's where the aim of that call is to help the client and you together diagnose what the core problem is that they're having. You have to be ready at that point. If that's not a problem you can help them with, to like very servant-heartedly find someone else that can help them solve that problem. You don't go looking for, oh, see, I told you your logo was bad. You need a new, you're just coming just like you are, being honest, being transparent, helping them diagnose it. And after that, once the problem has been identified, you will be seen to them as like a thought leader. It's like thought leadership, like that's the effect that thought leadership has. You share your insights, you help people discover stuff about themselves, and you're literally seen as an expert. Like, so at that point, they're looking at you like, man, like we do have this problem. What should we do? You know what I mean? And they immediately look at, well, like, here's what we've done for some other clients. And that's when the inspiration call comes in. That's when we get on Zoom or in person or whatever y'all are comfortable with at that point. And you just share some work. You share some work that's maybe you really love, that's not relevant, but you share some work that you feel like could be relevant. If you don't have work that's relevant, just share some work that you really love and explain how it's the same kind of process. It's the same kind of problem that this company was having, and you help them bring their brand to life and help them overcome this pain and this problem with it. And but yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I just have a follow-up because I find
Yeah.
that really, really interesting. And it seems like, from what I'm hearing, it seems like the inspiration call is something if the client isn't sold yet, you don't have that contract yet, and it gives that added with testimonials to be able to show like credibility and what it would look like. And I would imagine that the reasoning behind you don't do that together, so you have that time to process what they're looking for, what their issues are in the discovery call. Is that correct?
You're wanting to build trust. You're wanting them to look at you and trust you. You don't meet someone, I don't know how many of you are single, how many of you are married, but if you meet someone and like you're just getting to know them, and like, yeah, I'm coming off a bad breakup. Well, there's a problem. Oh, okay, let's get married. Like, no, like you kind of take it one step at a time. And if they're willing to let me help them diagnose their problem, then I'm going to be honoring and like not forceful, and be like, hey, let me just show you what our capabilities are and how we can help you guys. And that's the purpose of the inspiration call, is really just to be empathetic. And now, will there be times when you're on a diagnosis call and some clients are like, yeah, that's our problem. How much will you charge to fix it? Like, they might just ask you, and like, you got to be ready to be like, well, but we like to stick to that process just because it helps reinforce what we're good at, and it helps create more of that buy-in on their end. And that after that, it's going to come down to just like, can they afford you? Probably. But I think if you can get to an inspiration call, and really wow them with what your capabilities are, I think you have a really high chance of having the next conversation about money and payment and all this. With this guy, with this insurance company, like this, I mean, think of this like the most intense Southern dude. And he was like cut right to the chase. Just scroll to the bottom, man. Show me the number. Like, not every client that we work with is like that, but we did get through the inspiration call. We kind of were like, whoa, 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 just chill. Let us show you, like, because they, you know, it's a very numbers focused industry. So
So I have one last question on this, and then we'll move off from the inspiration. I'm just inspired. So would you say that this is something that you have in your process where you let before a discovery call know that you normally do a discovery call and then a follow-up inspiration call? Or is this something that you've determined afterwards, kind of case by case with the client?
yeah, I think that's a great question. I think it just depends on how the conversation is framed. I mean, we'll get some emails. I mean, I still get calls from people that know me, like from my freelance days, that have big companies. They're like, hey, we need a logo. And I'm just like, oh, guys, I'm just like, hey, you know, what's it for? You know, like, and if it's like, oh, I just need a logo for my mom's wants to start a blog. I'm like, all right, stop. Like, but if it's like, you know, I got a call last week from a guy that's in private equity, massive industry. And he was like, hey, we're starting a company. And like, I was given your name and I was like, all right, well, hey, let's get on a call with you and your business partner and kind of hear the vision behind what you want to do. So I don't necessarily formally say, first, we will have the discovery call. And that it just depends. If they ask you what your process is, I say, yeah, here's kind of how we do things. First, we have a conversation to figure out what your problems are and to see if we can help you overcome those. And, you know, if we can after that, then we'd like to show you some of our work and how we do things. And then we take it from there. So it just kind of depends on how the conversation starts, but you don't always have to like jump out there and be like, here is my process. I do think it's important that you don't always lead with, here's my portfolio. Because at the end of the day, if you are the best designer in the world, people that don't have good taste in design won't care about your portfolio. They have a problem that needs solved. So when you lead with the problem, it always sets you up to develop more trust, to be more empathetic. And then once you've like clearly aligned around what that problem is together, then you can talk about, here's some of the work that we did. Here's the problem this client was having. They were having a hard time connecting with their blah, blah, blah. And then you kind of piece it all together. So it's not just like, look at my work. Because not everybody really cares or understands why you created that great logo and came up with that great visual identity system. To them, it's just fonts and colors, you know?
Victor, go for it.
There it is. Brandon, thanks for your time. Language really matters, obviously. So I was wondering, in your example, when you help them self-diagnose essentially to getting to brand strategy, was it an intentional, conscious decision or a tactic to not necessarily talk about, say, brand strategy, the word, but help them get to what would eventually be what your definition or our definition might be for brand strategy? Because otherwise I assume that could mess with people or confuse them.
Dude, and I was hoping maybe this would come up because I think this is very important. When you get into this world of brand strategy, and thank you for the question, I think this is awesome. When you get into the world of brand strategy, like any of us on this call, you become fascinated. You start reading Marty Neumeier right away, right? And you guys are just like, oh my, your brain, your world kind of explodes and you become so excited about it. But the clients of the world that have the paying dollars to really like value what you guys do, they're not passionate about brand strategy. I would say that maybe 80% of them or more don't know what a brand strategy is. So one thing that we learned with this client, which was really key, was they kept having a really hard time when we would talk about brand. And we even went through the whole thing of like, your brand is not your logo. Your brand is what your audience says about you. You guys have all heard this. You guys have said it. You guys have probably made Instagram posts about it. And it's true and it's great. But this client, we were really trying to listen. And that's key, is to listen. And they weren't getting that. They kept they kept stumbling over the word brand. And so, but what we realized they did have a deep understanding of is marketing. They love marketing and they realized they need marketing. And they had a buddy with another company that invested a bunch of marketing dollars and got a great result. And so we didn't call it a brand strategy at all. We actually called it a brand and marketing playbook. And they went nuts over that. And so I think this is really key because I don't know that what you call it matters. I think as long as they understand the value behind it, that's the most important thing. If they understand what you mean by brand strategy and you can drive it home, great. But when we had the line item on the thing, you know, as we were showing it to them, like, this is your brand and marketing playbook. This is what a brand and marketing playbook can do. And, you know, kind of where copywriting and marketing overlaps is like, you know, we do have people on our team that have an understanding of marketing. So we were able to give them like a high level, here's what we think you should do from a marketing perspective, without spending a ton of time building out a whole marketing plan. But it all connected back to their brand and the strategy that we built for their brand. They were blown away. They were like, this is it. This is what we need. And we didn't even really use the word brand strategy after that. Now, what we built for them is a brand strategy, and and they love it. But we're like, all right, we're going to stop trying to squeeze water from a rock here, and we're just going to use in language that they understand. So I think your point is spot on. I think language matters, and you guys have to listen to what are they understanding? What is the language that they're using? Do they know what the difference between brand and marketing is? This client had no clue the difference between brand and marketing. Well, do we spend 2 hours doing a workshop with them to get them to explain the difference between brand and marketing, just so that we can sell them something? It was like, so yeah.
Okay, I want to ask a question that it came up when Brandon, when we were talking, and you were talking about cross-functional, I think it was cross-functional skills and how important that is. Can you talk about that and what you mean by that and how that might benefit us in the room?
Yeah. So I didn't learn all my things just in a vacuum. I was in a meeting with a guy this was like a coaching thing. I guess I would consider it like a coaching thing, but this guy was one of the former VPs at like Disney and Walmart. He had worked for all these massive companies, and he had like a very basic like bachelor's degree, or maybe it was like even like an associate's degree, but he was brilliant. And I asked him, I was like, how did you scale to the top of these companies and increase your value the way that you did, and not have like the MBA that everyone else in your field or at the same level of these companies has? And he's like, that's a great question. He goes, here's how I did it. Over the course of about a decade, he goes, I've probably spent about $200,000 over time developing cross-functional skills. And this light bulb, this was before I really had, my buddies and I had started this company, and I was still like deciding, should I focus on brand strategy or just try to become a really good designer still? And this was when the light bulb came on for me. That was like cross-functional skills. And so courses, certifications, this guy was in a different industry, not a design industry, but he had just invested in himself. And so one thing that I learned, it started me on this journey of learning how to have an understanding of marketing. Started reading books on marketing, how to build funnels. Started having a deep understanding of how to tell stories, how to build narratives. It was super key to design. If you guys learn how to tell stories and build narratives, it'll tremendously help the way that you see things as a problem solver. Copywriting, how to write copy, how to write basic sales copy. So I started like immersing myself in this world of things, kind of in a jack of all trades mindset, but really like not necessarily thinking that way, but really wanting to learn and really have an understanding. And so what I started to realize, especially learning brand strategy, I started to realize like my value started increasing. And this is one of the things also as well that just helped me kind of become really successful as a designer, and be seen not just as a pair of hands. Now I'm able to come into meetings and I'm able to offer insight that's beyond just like, I think you should use this font, you know? And I think it's really key. And I think what becoming a brand strategist is, it's not saying goodbye to design or marketing or copywriting or whatever it is that, you know, you feel like it was your core baseline thing. It's adding a tool to your tool belt to help you become more valuable as a designer or as a copywriter. And so when I see people that are like kind of downplaying on social media, like brand strategy, it's snake oil, you don't need to do that. Design is just as valuable. Well, it is, but design is seen as a commodity. That's the problem. If you're able to add more tools to your tool belt and increase your own value, you're able to charge more money. You're able to actually be more valuable. You're able to solve bigger problems, which for me, that's what it was about. Because I felt like I had all this gifting and ability, and I'm like, gosh, I just don't feel like I'm getting the most out of myself just picking fonts for people. Like I want to actually help them with their business. I actually want to help them solve their problems. And so developing cross-functional skills that overlap with where you're at, to me, is one of the fastest ways to fast track your growth and to scale and increase the perceived value that you have. So yeah, I mean, I feel like I could talk about that because I feel like it's really, I coach a lot of young creatives that are starting out in the creative world, and this is a really big thing for them. Like, you know, I'm not saying stop being a designer. I'm not saying stop learning how to get better. That's a given, right? If you're a brand designer and your thing is logos, visual identities, get better. But like, you learn how to add the strategy piece to your tool belt. Now you can double what you're charging, triple what you're charging. And at the end of the day, you can make more money, which I know everybody on this call wants to make more money. I hope. Maybe if not, maybe we need another call with those people where we talk about some other things, Melinda. But
Yes, very true. Very true. Any follow-up to the cross-functional skills specifically? And then if not, we'll go to another question. Chelsea, go for it.
Yeah, not a question, but I just wanted to note that I got a really good takeaway based off of what you said, because I used to consider myself or say that I'm the Jill of all trades, and would try and figure out how do I niche down, and then realize that brand strategy really is that thing. So I kind of just thought like you could be the jack of all trades mindset, but then go all in as the master of strategy.
yep.
That kind of tied it together. So
I think
just wanted to say that.
I think having a jack of all trades mindset is, I think it's very important to help you niche, just like what you said. I don't think you can niche down without having a jack of all trades mindset. I'll say that too. And there are actual books, psychology, to support this. When you look at sports and you look at athletes, the only sport out there that doesn't require this ability to be successful is golf. Every other sport, you look at football, baseball, the best athletes are really good at a lot of sports. And so it's the same kind of correlation here. But I think just having that mindset, not saying I am going to become a jack of all trades, but having that mindset, being able to learn, add tools to your tool belt so that you can offer the most value as a designer, as a marketer, as a copywriter, et cetera.
What is the oddest or furthest away, like sector of interest that's kind of, maybe it's kind of surprised you with value in what you do? Anything come to mind?
Well, that's such a great question. So my little firm, we have a little boutique. We call it a consultancy, not really an agency. It functions kind of like an agency, but all of our clients are in the B2B world. And when I say the B2B world, I'm talking like big consulting firms that sell ERP systems. Do any of you know what an ERP system is? Two. I see two. Google it. It's super complicated and super boring, but learning and having an understanding of like industries that maybe don't excite me, I think has probably been that thing, because I think that there are industries and there are niches where there really are like riches. And so one thing that we've learned is that the kind of clients that have a lot of money that really value this kind of work, they are not coffee shops, they are not restaurants, they are not mom and pop small businesses. They are big firms, they are big companies, and they will spend 6 figures on a brand strategy because they already understand the value behind it. And so we have learned this and we have realized it. And so immersing myself in kind of different industries that maybe aren't sexy, that maybe aren't exciting, has become like a passion of mine. And what it's done is it's given us a view and a lens into even down into the smaller B2C stuff that's like expanded our ability to see things differently and see it from different angles and how other brands are viewed and looked at. And so I think that's been huge. And so I think everybody probably has to find what that is for them too. That's a great question. Hopefully that helped answer it.
How did you get to the point of getting these types of clients that are doing these things that you had no idea about maybe previously? Like how did this even come about that you're working with these types of clients?
Love it. This is another thing that I think is very important that I love to talk about with young creatives. Not everything, but I would say that a lot of what will happen, a lot of the big stuff that will happen in your career is relational, right? You meet somebody, you get a referral, you meet a friend. Designers and creatives. Now, hear me out, because I'm really big into like, don't change, be who you are. Don't feel like you have to change. But creatives that can't turn on and turn off the ability to be extroverted and relatable and be around people have a really hard time. And so one thing that's really valuable is going out. Not obviously we're still coming out of a pandemic, but like getting on calls, getting on meetings, the weird word networking, but like tapping the relationships of the people that you have that are maybe in some of these bigger companies that you might want to work with. Be relatable, be around people, be friends with people. Don't be a creative that hides away in their dark cave and just makes things. You'll be doing that. You'll still be doing that in 10 years, you know? If you really want to break out of that box, you have to be a human being. And so our big thing, even at our little company, is just being human centered in everything we do and being people and getting on call. We're in this B2B world where you get on calls and it's literally like clients are like, it's been their 10th call that day. And they're just like, all right, what do we have on the agenda? We come into the meeting like this, like, what's up, guys? Like, just being relatable and being approachable. And so what happened with us is we just took advantage of the relationships that we had. And we had some friends that we had done some work with that moved companies, and they had started out in this really big B2B firm, and they were like, hey, we think we have a thing that you guys could help on. It started as a small project and it's turned into a whole world for us, just because doing the little things of being human, being relatable, showing up on time. I always tell the young creatives that I coach is that the little things are the big things. And so overcoming your fear of being on the phone and being on the screen and making phone calls. So many people are just afraid of getting on the phone and talking. Well, these big clients and these big companies that have a lot of money, they need to get on calls probably maybe 2 or 3 times a day with you. If you're scared to talk on the phone, like it's probably not going to be good for you. So find out what the things are that are limiting you. And I'm not saying like if you're introverted, and you guys aren't going to believe me, but like I recharge by myself. I'm not an extrovert mainly. I love being around people and I love communicating, but if I had the opportunity to go to a party or stay home, I'm staying home. Like, so the ability to like turn that on a little bit and turn that off, and like, hey, like I have got to go into a meeting I don't feel like, and I am going to be an extrovert for the next hour. And maybe you're faking it a little bit, but you're also like, it's going to benefit you, and it's going to help you seem more relatable. It's going to help you seem more approachable. And so that's probably a bit longer answer to that question, but we got into that world just by leveraging the relationships that we already had and following up and being friends with people that were in that space, and not just waiting for the work to come to us, but being proactive about going out and getting it and then doing a good job with it once we have it. I don't know. Does that resonate with anybody a little bit?
Yeah, it seems it is, and people are saying thank you in the chat as well.
Yeah. In the West, we receive information by like just kind of like taking it all in. Like I used to do a lot of, I used to be in ministry. I used to share in churches a lot. Like people in other cultures, like if you're saying something that they agree with, they'll be like shouting and be like, yeah, but like I noticed like in the West, if they really agree with something, it'll be like this. If it's really hitting home, it's more like, but I just wanted to make sure. And that's hard. And that takes being in community where people will like challenge you and like help you refine that. And so, yeah, just be yourself.
I had a question about, because this comes up a lot randomly in our group, our case studies. Can you talk about what you guys do and how you show your case studies, how you present them, how you talk about them, anything to do with case studies?
So that's great. I hate case studies, first of all, because you feel like you're just like, oh, I have to talk about this again. I already did all this work. Like, it's not my favorite thing to do. It's not my favorite, but it is necessary. So especially in this big world that we're in right now, and we're not big on proposals. Like we're really big on the win without pitching, but legally, like we'll get an RFP, we'll get a request for proposal. And if you want to do the work, you've got to send one. But here's my thing with case studies. And this is like a foundational thing for myself, as well as for our little company that we have. But I think too, like it could be helpful for you guys. Story, learn how to tell stories. if you haven't read Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller, I would highly recommend it. If learn how to build a narrative framework for anything. And so when we do case studies, we don't just have some slides or whatever that show what we made or why we made it. We literally tell a story. Hey, this client came to us and here's the problem. When you tell any good story, you always start with the problem. So story is like the foundational thing to everything that we do. Even like we talked about earlier, when we get on a discovery or we get on a diagnosis, let's start with the problem. What's the problem? You start with the problem the client had, how you help them overcome it. Make sure you show your best work, and make sure you have a clear call to action. That's a key to any story. At the end of the case study, make sure you're giving them a link or a button or an opportunity, telling them what to do to reach you, to work with you. We don't overthink it. And the thing that I've learned about case studies is the better of a reputation you get, the less you actually have to do them. Now we're getting people coming to us for work that they don't even like want to see our work yet. And we're like, well, let's get to the inspiration call. And then we end up showing them some anyway. But I think just learn how to tell a story with your case studies. Learn how to position yourself as the guide that turned your client into the hero. I'll say that again. Learn how to position yourself as the guide that turned your client into the hero. That's the key. And so telling a good story, you are not the hero. The brand strategist is not the hero. The client is the hero. You are just the guide. You are Mr. Miyagi and they are Daniel, if I'm going to use a Karate Kid analogy. But learning the framework for how a story is told is really, really important. There are 7 parts of that framework. I could get into that if you want, or you guys could probably learn that on your own. We could do another call and I'd be happy to break it down.
All right. I've got 8 pages of notes so far. Man, I could listen to you all day. I love the fucking language you use, and you have a great way with you're a storyteller.
Thanks, man. That means a lot. Thank you.
You're fucking welcome. Thank you. Listen, forget all my fucking notes. What's it like to work with your friends? Are these people you've grown up with? Are they your like fucking busy mates?
Yeah. So my business partner, one of my business partners, is one of my childhood friends. After high school, he went to college. I had my own other journey that we could talk about some other time that was very different than college. And this, one of my best friends, like he went on to work for some really big agencies doing content strategy. And he was one of the guys that I was like, man, if I really want to up my game and charge more, like I gotta align myself with people better than me. So we reconnected. We had always stayed in touch over the years, and I don't have a lot of close friends from childhood. He's one of maybe 3 that I still talk to. And we just reconnected about 2 years ago and started talking about work that we were doing separately, and threw out the idea we should get together and do this together. It's been awesome. With any good relationship, whether it's a friend or whether it's a new person, have the expectations outlined out front. But with this buddy, like here's one thing I've learned, and I've had other people tell me this too. Childhood friends, historically, this is something I've been told. I'm still learning this. I'm still only about 2 years in, but I've been told that childhood friends make good business partners because they already know each other's faults and what the red flags may be. But I would not normally suggest going and find your best friend to work with. The stars kind of aligned for me and this one best friend. I've got another best friend who I do stuff as well with, who I met at church. And just like when you meet someone, I think it's who's the famous author that has that saying, when 2 people meet and they both say, what, you too, that's when a friend is born. Like
C.S. Lewis, I think
it's C.S. Lewis. Yeah, it's either him or somebody. That's great. Yeah, great dude. Yeah. But yeah, it's been great. There's been challenges, but me and the friends that I partner with business-wise, we communicate so well about everything. We're transparent about everything. We align on the really big things, on the really big values, which I think is really key. For those of you that are single and looking for someone to get married to, align on the big things first. That's key. So they're kind of like foundational things to any relationship that are really key. Like if you align on the big things, I think that's really important. But it's been great. I mean, it's not been perfect, but we are aligned in our mission and what our vision is, and we're aligned on helping clients and serving and having this heart, having servants' hearts, which I think is really important. But yeah, it's not going to be that way for everybody though. So I would say tread lightly on that. If you've got a friend you're thinking about going into business with, Yeah.
Did you
It's a
just
great
say,
question.
did you just say having servants' hearts?
Yes.
Oh, that's fucking lovely then.
Yeah. Because you know why? If you
No
don't have
idea.
a servant's heart and you want to get something out of the client and you're there to get and not take, they can smell it a mile away. And so being genuine, and if you don't have a heart to help people, I'm not saying don't be confident and don't have your personality, but if you're just there to get money from them, they're going to know it and you're not going to really be able to help them anyway. Now you might be really good at selling and you could get some money out of them, but yeah, so that's a personal value of mine. And that's something that my business partner and I are aligned on. I personally think it's really good to have a servant's heart with this kind of work. But I think there's a lot of people in the creative industry that don't. And you guys all hear the horror stories of stuff that happens. I'm not saying that's the reason why, but anyways.
Have you got a mission you and your friends are currently on?
So our mission is to put empathy and humanity back in business for B2B leaders. That's our mission statement. Our tagline is put humanity back in business.
And is that the same? Is that the same for your young creatives who you coach?
No, what I want to help young creatives do is like, I don't have like a super clear defined thing because that's like a little sub brand that I'm kind of working on right now. It's like a fun thing, but I just want to help young creatives break out of the limits that we put on ourselves. You guys all know this. We've all done this. We put limits on our mind about money and valuing ourselves and imposter syndrome and all these things. And a lot of young creatives do this. And so I think my mission there is just to help people remove their own limits because they're really made up. They're really not there. I'm an uneducated person, and I feel like I don't think I've achieved everything. I still think I have a lot to achieve, but if I could do it, I think anybody can.
How might we, Brandon, help ourselves overcome our own self-imposed limits?
One, be around people that will encourage you. If all your friends are sarcastic and it's like fun and joking way and you put each other down, I would say maybe you need to find some friends that are more life-giving because even though you're joking around a lot, the words actually have metaphysical power. And so I would say be around people that will speak life over you. Be around people. You need people that will call you out, call you on your stuff. But I think a lot of people are just lacking encouragement. And I've been fortunate enough to be around people that saw my abilities and said, dude, you're operating and living way below the standard of what you're capable of. And they actually called me higher. So find people that call you higher, and in every area of your life, creatively, especially. So important. I know I said one and only gave you one, but I don't know if we had time to get into some other stuff. Yeah, that's a great question, bro.
Two, refer back to number one.
Yeah, there you go. It's great.
Victor, did you had
Yeah, if I could, Brandon, you were saying something that really kind of inspired a question I sometimes ask, and I think you'd be good to get your insight. What big question do you aspire to answer through the work you provide?
Man, what a great question. I think one of them is when you get into design too, like, I'm a designer at heart. I think answering the question, does beauty really matter? If you want to get philosophical here, I think it does. I think things being beautiful matter in a lot of ways. And I think helping the world see that and put meaning behind why they matter is something I'm really, really passionate about. And I could probably unpack that for hours, but I don't think any of you would be in this boot camp if you didn't think beauty mattered. But I think that matters is from design all the way to the way that we all interact with each other and the way that we all accept each other and the way that we show love to each other. And yeah, I think having a beautiful world and everything that word encompasses, I think is really important. And I think as creatives, this is my belief. I think that God gave everybody on this call the creative ability because I think even to him, it matters. Beauty matters. And I think it's inside of everybody on this call for a reason to make beautiful things and make the world beautiful. So hopefully I can help answer that question with my life a little bit more.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
Pun intended, right?
Yes. We have 4 minutes. Anyone want to follow up? Zoe, go for it.
Brandon, I know you mentioned something about preaching, or you only call it that when you're Catholic. I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So, can you tell us about your journey of like learning to just like, I'm sort of thinking that in the world of like just public speaking. I feel like that probably informed, you know, how you handle this call, how you handle like talking to clients, and just kind of how you develop those skills.
Yeah.
So you did say you were a minister. Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
Hey, right.
So when I grew up in Northeast Ohio, and I was up from the age of 18 till about 23, I was basically in full-time ministry. And I think it really taught me a lot about communicating with people and loving people. I am a Christian, and I know that's gotten, you know, Christianity has gotten a really bad name, and I'm very vocal about it though, but I'm also very vocal about being the actual real kind, and not the kind that's a bigot and the kind that's like, you know what I mean? But that's been a big part of my journey, and I think it plays into it a lot. I've had a lot of experience sharing and preaching and teaching and doing that kind of stuff. But I think to just tie it back into like public speaking, I heard I consider my mentors. He's a big leadership guy. His name is Andy Andrews. If you guys look up his books, he's got some really powerful books. He has a whole thing that he goes and does at colleges, and it's like this thing about speaking, and he says, smile when you talk. And he has this whole, like, almost like a TED talk about how smiling when you talk can transform the entire message and the way that something is communicated and delivered. So that's been something that I've tried to instill, not just to ministry things, because I'm not technically in full-time ministry anymore. Like I'm full-time dad, husband, creator now, you know what I mean? But I think just learning how to smile when you talk to people, it sounds so simple. But I think it's so powerful, and just getting comfortable talking to people is so important, and looking people in the eye when you talk to them. And again, it goes back to the little things being the big things. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
So does smiling when you talk come from the inside or the outside?
I think it might be both. I don't know. It's one of those things that I just try to do. And we have this thing on our calls, because we have a small team and we're on a lot of calls with clients, and we hold each other accountable to not have resting Zoom face. We talk about it a lot, but it's hard. I'm guilty of it too, but I just think I'll leave you guys with this. Okay. This is really powerful. Go and buy this book. Okay. Melinda, I don't know if you've heard of this, but there's 2 years of content in here for you. I'm giving this away to you guys. Okay. It's not even my book. It's called The Human Brand. I think that's what it's called. Has anyone read it? Oh my gosh. They did a 10-year or something like that study about like how leading with being warm and approachable over your competence, like what your abilities are and skills are, have these miraculous ability to like increase the value of brands. But it's all about people and how we interact with each other too. So like, I think, to go back to what you said, Zoe, just learning how to be warm and approachable and communicate. I don't think you can put high enough value on that. I think it's really important, especially in this day and age when we may all be on Zoom calls for a while, depending on what happens with this pandemic and stuff like that. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
I want us all to see you off with everyone just do resting Zoom face.
Brandon, I don't want to keep you any longer. Thank you for not only giving your time when we and you first had our chat, but also coming back and having this chat with everyone here, and for emailing me and everything that you do to help out us, but young creatives and your clients too. And that I feel like we get to reap the benefit and the overflow of all of what you already are doing. So thank you.
Thank you guys for listening and asking really good questions. It's been awesome. Thank you guys.
Everybody, and thank you, Brandon. Ledge.